Oh, builds. Where would we be without them? Probably getting one shot in every difficult PvE activity. Or maybe crying somewhere in a corner because the game's too hard. Or, just quite frankly, not playing the game at all because it's barely playable these days. What's going on, guys? Bolts here, back with another video. You guys absolutely smashed the first one, so I'm here to bring you another best builds video to complete the upcoming Grandmaster Nightfalls for Season of the Deep that go live very shortly here on June 13th. This video will include all three characters' best builds for Grandmaster Nightfalls, the builds I recommend using for each GM, and what I will be using in my solo Grandmaster runs that I upload here on my channel. Let's get right into it. Okay, starting off with Titan, we are going to be taking a look at Strand Titan. Strand Titan is probably one of, if not the most overpowered build we've seen in Destiny. I mean, you can quite literally suspend entire waves of adds as they helplessly float in the air for about 12 seconds. Pretty cool, right? For the subclass, we're obviously going to be using Strand. I like to use Rally Barricade so I can shoot over my wall at all the helpless adds floating in the air. Strafe Jump, because my Titan jumping is absolutely abysmal. Frenzied Blade, and Shackle Grenade. Feel free to use what you like here, as long as you're using Shackle Grenade so you can suspend anything that looks at you funny. Now for the aspects, we're going to be using Into the Fray. Into the Fray grants you Woven Mail when casting your super to nearby allies, as well as when you destroy a Tangle. Now if you don't know what Woven Mail is, you should probably get out from under the rock you've been living under, because it's by far the best damage reduction that has ever graced this game. You pair that with tier 10 resilience and man, have fun never being the guy that causes the wipe. The second aspect we will be using is Drenger's Lash. This aspect allows us to use our class ability to send out projectiles that will suspend and damage targets it hits. That paired with our Shackle Grenade will make you a suspending machine. Damn, look at all the fun those enemies are having. Moving on to fragments. We're going to be using Thread of Mind, where defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. Now this is important because it allows us to get our class ability back pretty quickly to help keep the infinite suspending going. Next we have Thread of Ascent. Activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon and some airborne effectiveness, but who really cares about that garbage? Because the whole build revolves around suspending targets and then killing those suspending targets, having your gun reloaded while suspending with your Shackle Grenade is a major benefit in my opinion. Thread of Continuity. Thread of Continuity will increase the duration of your suspended effect from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. I know 2 seconds doesn't sound major, but trust me guys, as hard as GM enemies hit, you'll be wishing you had those 2 seconds. Lastly, we have Thread of Warding. This is probably the most important fragment we will be using, where picking up an Orb of Power grants you Woven Mail. With how freaking Orb of Power creation is nowadays in Destiny, between both you and your teammates, you will constantly have Woven Mail procced with all the orbs and suspending that you will be doing. For our mods, you can pause the video here or take a screenshot if you know what most of these mods do, but I'm going to break these mods down. Starting with the helmet, we have Hands On to gain bonus super energy on melee kills. The Titan melee is pretty strong and usually one-shots red bars into GM for a quick kill and or escape. We also have Heavy Ammo Finder to increase the drop chance of heavy ammo on a kill, because come on, who doesn't like seeing that sweet heavy brick? Just look at it. We have Kinetic Siphon. Rapid kinetic weapon final blows create an Orb of Power. For the gauntlets, we have Focusing Strike, which grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack. You could also use Impact Induction here, where causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. Either one works. I would just use one of these two so you can help with that ability uptime. Grenade Kickstart. So when we have an armor charge, when your grenade energy is fully expended, you get grenade energy back. If you don't know what an armor charge is, essentially if you pick up an Orb of Power, you will get an armor charge, and then this mod allows you to consume that armor charge to get grenade energy back. This mod is mainly to guarantee that you will have at least one suspending ability up at all times. We also have heavy-handed, where your powered melee final blows create an orb of power. Now, we have this on here because, as I said, they can pretty much one-shot a red bar, and by using our charge melee, we also get an orb, which means if we need to quickly escape or we get trapped, picking up that orb will give you Woven Mail due to Thread of Warding. Moving on to the chest plate. The chest plate really doesn't matter. I mean, well, it does matter, but what I mean is the threat for the GM. So the amount of damage, outgoing damage enemies will do to you, whether it's, you know, arc threat, solar threat, void threat, or all those things will do more damage to you. That's going to determine what chest mods you use. I would use 3 resist mods. So right now I just have 2 arc resists on, just because I'll probably use this for a arc threat GM, and concussive dampener. So these will definitely change depending on what GM you are doing. Moving on to the boots. We are going to be using the Ambient Leap exotic. This exotic improves Drenger's Lash to better target adds to suspend them, and grants Woven Mail when suspending targets. Y'all starting to see the synergy here now? Beautiful, isn't it? For the mods, we have In Solution. In Solution reduces class ability cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So as I mentioned earlier, Orbs of Power are going to be absolutely everywhere, so you're basically always going to have this cooldown. We have Innervation, reduces grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. Just add more ways for us to keep those delicious suspending abilities up as frequent as possible. Kinetic Targeting. So your kinetic weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have an armor charge, and they will decay over time. So you'll have about 10 seconds of bonus kinetic weapon damage, which we're going to be using Osteostriga for this build because it's the most broken thing I've ever seen, but I'll get into that in a bit. Finally, for the class item, we have Bomber, which reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. And since we're going to be using our class ability pretty much all the time, we will constantly be getting that grenade energy back. We have Distribution, so it reduces all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. Since we will literally be close enough to sniff our enemies' assholes, this will be procced constantly. And lastly, we have a Powerful Attraction to automatically pick up Orbs of Power that are in our vicinity when using our class ability, which again, we will be spamming pretty much all the time. For our weapons, we're going to be using Osteostriga. For the other 2 weapons, you can use whatever weapon you want. It will depend on what GM you're doing, what champions you'll be facing, what you guys want to do for damage. So feel free to use any other guns in the 2 other slots. But Osteostriga here is a must. Does incredible damage, spreads poison, basically just creates nothing but chaos. It's magnificent. And for our artifact, the artifact doesn't really apply anything to us here. The only thing I would recommend is authorized mods for the melee. So the armor energy costs of all armor mods affecting your melee are significantly discounted. That way, instead of usually about 3 energy costs on the armor, which most of the melee mods are, they're discounted to 1, so you can stack more mods, more expensive mods in that place instead, because it only costs 1. The only other one I might recommend for this build is maybe getting counter charge, so you gain a stack of armor charge when you stun a champion. It's just nice to have. It's a free armor charge. GMs have like 8 million champions, so you're going to be stunning a lot. So that's for the artifact. Next up, we have Arc Titan. For Arc Titan, we'll be using a Heart of Inmost Light ability spam build. A couple seasons ago, Bungie nerfed Heart of Inmost Light pretty badly. RIP, my friend. But with the artifact we have this season, Heart of Inmost Light is back, baby. With this build, I guarantee you'll be spamming abilities like crazy once again. Let me start by explaining what Heart of Inmost Light does. By using an ability, you empower the other two abilities for a short duration. And empowering those abilities, they gain faster regen and do more damage. For example, if you melee something with your charged melee, your grenade will be empowered and do more damage and will regen the melee and your class ability faster. This is why it's ability spam, because you will constantly be using all three of your abilities to buff the other abilities and regen them faster. I hope that makes sense. So first, we're obviously going to be on Arc Titan. We're going to be using Thunder Crash as our super thruster because it's a lot quicker than popping a barricade. Strafe Jump, Thunderclap, or Seismic Strike, either one works, and a Pulse Grenade. For aspects, we're going to be using Touch of Thunder, where our Pulse Grenade will be creating ionic traces as it periodically damages targets as well as increases damage over time. And for anyone wondering, Ionic Traces is a seeking projectile that crawls across the floor and when picked up will give you ability energy. The other aspect is Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield buffs your melee damage and range. It also makes you amplified and triggers health regeneration on melee kills. For our fragments, we have Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace. We'll be pairing that with Spark of Shock, where our Arc Grenade jolts targets. Next, we have a Spark of Recharge. When critically wounded, your melee and grenade energy regenerates more quickly. For what I've seen, the regen from this procting is pretty high, and since it's a GM, you will probably be pretty weak a lot of the time. Lastly, we have a Spark of Magnitude. Spark of Magnitude will increase the duration that your Pulse Grenade will be on the field. And since we have Touch of Thunder, we will do more damage than the base grenade itself, since Touch of Thunder grants more damage over time for our Pulse Grenades. A lot of the mods I'm going to be previewing in this video are going to be duplicates, so I won't really go into detail like I did on the first build with these. Just going to go over them real quick. So on the helmet for our Arc Titan, we have Ashes to Assets, so we gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. Kinetic Siphon to get orbs of power with our kinetic weapon. You could use any siphon mod. And hands-on bonus super energy from melee kills. Bolstering Detonation grants class ability energy when you cause damage with grenade. We'll be doing that a lot. Momentum Transfer, causing damage with the grenade reduces melee cooldowns, so we'll be getting cooldowns on both of those things. And Firepower to create orbs from our grenade kills. I would recommend Charged Up on the chest plate. Any resist mod you'd like, just depends on what GM you're doing. Innervation on the boots, as well as Invigoration. Stacks on stacks, just to make sure we have as many armor charges as we can, because we're going to be using Utility Kickstart on our class item, which allows us to get our class ability energy back when it's fully expended. With Heart of Inmost Light, this will have constant uptime on our grenade buff, so our grenade will constantly do more damage because we will be having so many orbs, so many armor charges, and Utility Kickstart will be procced all the time. We also have Powerful Attraction, so automatically connects nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. Again, spamming that class ability non-stop, so we'll be picking up all the orbs in the vicinity. And lastly, Bomber reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. Next, I want to go into the artifact. I do want to talk about what makes this build so great, and it is some of these artifact mods. I would recommend using authorized mods melee, I already mentioned that, but the things I want to focus on is Electric Armor, Thunderous Retort, Amped Up, Lightning Strikes Twice, and Shock and Awe. All these mods from the artifact combined make this build so much better because it is just doing everything for Arc, which is what this subclass is. The synergies really well. It makes Heart of Inmost Light feel good again. Highly recommend using these artifact mods for your artifact. Final Titan build I have for you is Lorelei Titan. Lorelei creates a sunspot with improved restoration to constantly heal you when you are either critically wounded or when casting your barricade. This is strictly a survivability build to help keep yourselves alive throughout the GM. I used a very similar build to this one when I completed the corrupted Grandmaster Nightfall solo. I just made a few tweaks to it to make it even better. We're going to be using Hammer of Soul for our super, Bradley Barricade, Strafe Jump, and Solar Grenade. For our aspects, we have Soul Invictus, where our solar ability final blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, and defeating scorched targets will create a sunspot. The other aspect we have is Consecration. Now, normally I would use Roaring Flames, and I recommend most of you use Roaring Flames, but since the Corrupted is back in the GM rotation, some of you may not know, but Consecration allows you to glitch the elevator room a bit. All you have to do is hold a relic in your hand, slide while pressing your charged melee, and then when you get launched in the air, you press your charged melee again, you'll slam down, and it will break all the boss's shields in one go. So if you don't plan on doing that, please use Roaring Flames. Fragments, we have Ember of Torches to make us radiant when we deal damage with a powered melee. Radiant will buff our weapon damage for a short duration. Ember of Mercy, so reviving an ally gives you and your nearby allies restoration, which will heal you over time. It also gives you the benefit of picking up a fire sprite, grants restoration. Doesn't spawn the fire sprite, that's the next fragment we'll talk about, but you gain restoration from picking up a fire sprite as well. Ember of Searing, so defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. Thanks to Ember of Mercy, that will heal us. And lastly, we have Ember of Solace to increase our radiant and restoration effects. We'll just tick for longer, so basically we'll have more damage with radiant, more healing for longer with restoration. For our mods, on our helmet we have Hands On, Kinetic Siphon, and Heavy Ammo Finder. Firepower, Heavy Handed to get orbs from melee and grenade kills, as well as bolstering detonation for our gauntlets. Chest is any appropriate resist mod. Legs, we have Recuperation, which replenishes health each time you pick up an orb. Insulation, Kinetic Weapon Surge, you can use any surge you want. For the class item, we have Distribution and Time Dilation. Time Dilation increases the duration of our decay on our armor charges. So long story short, we will have our bonus to our weapon damage from our Kinetic Weapon Surge or whatever surge you use for a longer duration. Again, for weapons, use whatever you want depending on what the GM is. Champions there are. Artifact, that's my artifact. It's pretty much the same at all three of my characters because the only thing this really benefits is Arc. So there's the artifact. Next, we will be moving on to Warlock. Warlock is sort of in a weird spot right now since Starfire Protocol got absolutely nerfed into the ground. A lot of people have been using Sun Bracers, including myself, but Sun Bracers are just not extremely viable in Grandmasters. Enemies are too chunky to die from your melee, and then you're kind of just useless. But luckily for you Warlocks, I just got the build you need to feel on top once again. Starting with Arc, we have a Fallen Sunstar build. It's kind of ironic that it says Sun, even though it's an Arc exotic. Bungie, what the hell are you doing? But Fallen Sunstar improves ionic traces by making them move faster and grants you additional ability energy. Getting tired of all the ability spam builds yet? I certainly hope not. This build is better than Crown of Tempest in my opinion, because Fallen Sunstar is just a better and freer ability energy than Crown of Tempest is. So let's get into the build. We're going to be on Chaos Reach with Healing Rift, Burst Glide, All Lightning, and Pulse Grenade. Aspects include Electrostatic Mind, where defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace, pairing that with our Fallen Sunstar, and Arc Soul. So casting our Rift creates Seeking Arc Souls for you and the allies that pass through your Rift. The Arc Souls also gain increased fire rate when amplified. So the Arc Souls will basically shoot at anything in front of you constantly. And then again, if they're amplified, they'll do an increased fire rate, so they'll go even faster. So fragments, we are basically the same fragments as my Arc Titan build, except we switched Spark of Recharge for Spark of Resistance. So the fragments we have now is Spark of Ions, Spark of Magnitude, Spark of Shock, Spark of Resistance. So basically just another ability spam build. Grenade, Rift, Melee. Grenade, Rift, Melee. Grenade, Rift, Melee, etc. Rinse and repeat. For our mods, we have Ashes to Assets and Dynamo on our helmet. Dynamo reduces super cooldown when using your class ability near targets. This build allows us to play somewhat aggressive, so we will be surrounded by enemies quite often. The arms, we have Firepower for orbs, Bolstering Detonation, and Font of Focus. Gain bonus Discipline while you have an armor charge. Font of Focus, as well as any other font mods you didn't know, give you an additional 30 stat bonus to the stated stat. In our case, it's Discipline. So I feel like 70 Discipline is a pretty healthy spot for this build, since we can abuse the plus 30 to get to tier 10 Discipline. From the Font of Focus, with all the orbs that we'll be creating from this build, we will constantly have Font of Focus. Chests, again, is any appropriate resist mods. Boots, we have Innervation, Arc Weapon Surge, so our arc weapons will do more damage. Again, use any surge you want. And Absolution, which reduces all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an orb. Finally, the class item, we have Time Dilation, Bomber, and Powerful Attraction. The artifact mods are basically the same as they were on Titan. They're literally no different. Same arc mods, because that's the only thing this artifact really benefits is arc stuff. So get the same arc mods, use them, abuse them, have fun spamming arc Warlock abilities. Next, we got a Controverse Hold Void Warlock build. This build has been the same for years and is still very viable and is probably the most used exotic for Void Warlocks. Controverse Hold allows you to overcharge your grenade by holding down your grenade button. While overcharging your grenade, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Charge Void Grenades return grenade energy on hit, so throwing your grenade down when it's overcharged will refund grenade energy. So I'm not really going to sugarcoat this one. This build revolves heavily around just spamming your Vortex Grenade. What's new? Another ability spam. For the super, we have Nova Bomb, the one that moves slowly, aka Slova Bomb, Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Pocket Singularity, and Vortex Grenade. Our aspects are Chaos Acceleration to increase the size and linger duration of our Vortex Grenade, Feed the Void to get Devour on our grenade kills. We should have Devour quite frequently since our main damage is our grenade, And if you don't know what Devour is a buff that heals you as you get kills. So the timer will tick down once you get Devour to proct, but if you get a kill, that timer will reset and also heal you. So yeah, basically infinite healing if it's done right. For fragments, we have Echo of Expulsion, where our Void ability final blows cause targets to explode. Echo of Remnants, so our Vortex Grenade can last longer on the field. Echo of Undermining to weaken targets. Yes, it is minus 20 discipline, but it is worth it because you get your grenade back so fast with Controverse Hold, as well as do critical damage as long as the enemy is weakened with both your weapons and your grenade. Lastly, we have Echo of Starvation, where picking up an Orb of Power will also grant us Devour. So now we have 2 ways to get Devour. Goal is to not die. Now we are going to look at Strand Warlock. I used Strand Warlock quite a bit last season in GMs, and it was extremely fun and pretty free. Necrotic Grips is a great exotic to pair with Strand, as long as you're using Osteostriga. Necrotic Grips poisons combatants upon damaging them, which deals damage over time. Defeating those poison targets spreads the poison. This paired with Osteo will literally poison an entire room of ads because it just keeps chaining. This clip shows Osteo poison without Necrotic Grips. As you can see, the poison isn't really getting the spread we're looking for. Now, with Necrotic Grips, we literally see the whole cave instantly die to poison. For the subclass, we obviously have Needle Storm. We're going to be using Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Arcane Needle, which is actually a huge part of this build, so make sure you're also tagging things with a charged melee to unravel them, and then Shackle Grenade for suspending. For aspects, we're using Weaver's Call to create threadlings when using our Rift, which we'll be spamming a lot, and Mind Spun Invocation, where consuming our Shackle Grenade grants Weaver's Trance. Weaver's Trance will suspend a bunch of surrounding enemies when you get a kill with it being active. For fragments, we have Thread of Mind, Thread of Generation to get our grenade energy back by dealing damage, Thread of Fury to get melee energy by damaging targets with the Tangle, and a Thread of Continuity again as well, just for extra suspend and unravel time. Lastly, for Warlock, we have a Solar build. With Starfire Protocol being nerfed, Solar Warlock in endgame PvE is kind of in a subpar spot right now. Unless you're using Sunbracers like every Warlock in the game is right now, if you're using a Solar subclass for things like Ghost of the Deep Dungeon, Solo Flawless, things like that. But unfortunately, I don't think Sunbracers is going to be too viable here with how chunky GM ads are. More than likely, unless you're super leveled, which you are capped in GMs as well, your Incineration Snap is not going to do enough damage to get the kill and get the Sunbracers perk to proct. With that being said, the build I'm going to bestow upon you is a classic. It's a Lunafactions build. That's right, Warlocks. You're going back to the team playing, well using, no ad killing super soldier that you are always destined to be. Lunafactions reload speed is increased when you are standing in a rift or a well. It also does 0.9 times more reload speed for your allies who are also standing in that well or rift. This is essentially good for doing boss damage for the GM or killing things like a champion when you and your allies are standing in your well. There's not too much to say about this build since your entire build revolves around reloading your gun. But I would use Solar Grenade with Icarus Dash and Touch of Flame as the aspects. For your fragments, your main fragments you want to focus here are Ember Resolve to heal yourself with grenade kills, Ember of Mercy for restoration by picking up a fire sprite, and Ember of Searing to spawn that fire sprite by killing scorched targets, aka getting grenade kills. Last one, it's totally up to you. Finally, we have Hunters. Oh, Hunters. I am genuinely starting to feel bad for you guys. You guys got shafted yet again. Your one fun build that uses Arc Hunter and Assassin's Cowl is definitely not viable in a GM. Like, literally whatsoever. You would easily get gunned down before you can even see the enemy you're going to melee. So what does that leave? Well, that leaves you to be the team player and stay alive when your dog meat teammates can't. Yes, I am talking about Void Invisibility spam. In this build, you will be using Graviton Forfeit. Graviton Forfeit improves invisibility and increases the duration of your invisibility. It also gives you an increase in melee recharge rate when you're invis, and an even longer recharge rate when enemies are within 15 meters of you. So ideally, you'd go invisible, hang around the ads, get your energy back, dip out, go invis again, rinse and repeat. For the super, we're going to be using Mobius Quiver. I like to use Marksman Dodge, Triple Jump, Snare Bomb, and Vortex Grenade. For our aspects, we're going to be using Trapper's Ambush to unlock an in-air dive that makes us invis by consuming our melee attack, and the move also will weaken combatants affected by the smoke. The other aspect is Vanishing Step, where dodging makes you invis. That's why I use the one that reloads our weapon, because I don't really need my melee charge back since I'm getting it so fast anyway. Our fragments, we're going to be using Echo of Dilation. I'm mainly using this for the plus 10 mobility because my hunter stats are Weenie Hut Junior tier. So feel free to use Echo of Undermining or Echo of Expulsion instead. Echo of Remnants is the next one for our grenade to linger longer, and Echo of Persistence for an increased invisibility duration. For the mods on our hunter, we are going to be using Ashes to Assets, Heavy Ammo Finder on the helmet, Bolstering Detonation, Firepower, and Impact Induction on our gauntlets. Any resist mod depending on the GM you play, but I would use the charged up. Insulation, Recuperation, and Kinetic Weapon Surge on the boots. Lastly, for the class item, I have Bomber, Powerful Attraction, since we will be spamming our dodge a lot, and Utility Kickstart to get that dodge back quickly, because I do not have that high mobility. Unfortunately, that is really it for hunters these days. They have yet to have an ability spam or ad killing workhorse of an exotic come their way to use in endgame PvE like GMs. That's gonna do it for all of the builds in this video. These builds are the strongest builds and most beneficial builds in my opinion for the upcoming GMs. If you want to stick around, this will be the part of the video where I tell you what builds I'm going to be using. I do solo all of the GMs, so I will state what build I plan on using and for what GM I will be using it for, to give you guys some insight on what to use for specific GMs this season. Alright, so getting right into it, we are not entirely sure of the order since GMs are starting so early this year. We still don't entirely know what would be after Lightblade, which is next week, whether it be Fallen Saber or Battlegrounds. I'm assuming Battlegrounds is going to be last, so I'm going to do my best by going in order of which I think the GMs are going to appear. First off, starting with Lightblade, I plan on using Strand Titan with Aviant Leap or Arc Titan with Heart of Inmost Light. For Fallen Saber, I will use either Arc Warlock with Fallen Sunstar or Arc Titan with Heart of Inmost Light. For the Moon Battlegrounds, I will be using Arc Titan with Heart of Inmost Light Void Warlock with Controverse Hold, or Strand Titan with Ambient Leap. Gotta see how it plays out first. For the Devil's Lair, we're going to be using Void Warlock with Controverse Hold. The Corrupted, Solar Titan with Lorelei. And lastly, the Disgraced with Arc Warlock with Fallen Sunstar, or Arc Titan with Heart of Inmost Light. That's what I plan on using for each of these 6 GMs this season. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.